Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue in English because mon français c'est terrible, alors je continue en anglais. Thank you very much for having me this morning. It's truly a privilege and an honor for me to be able to spend time with you this morning. And I want to share a few experiences with you about metropolitan municipalities and local government in South Africa. I'm very proud of our system, but I also want to be honest and give you an honest picture of our experiences. I think I can sense the excitement and the anxiety in the room that we also felt about 10 years ago when we were embarking on the same process. And I always want to make the point that one has to be careful with international comparisons. Your own context, your own history, your own challenges are the most important in terms of how you chart a way forward. But what South Africa and Tunisia have in common is that we have very strong constitutional protection of local government in our constitution. And coincidentally, in both our constitutions is Chapter 7. There's something magic about the number 7. We also chose Chapter 7 of our constitution to protect local government, which puts us in a category of countries with strong constitutional protection on the continent. Uganda, Zambia, South Africa, and Tunisia are now the 4 countries on the continent with strong constitutional protection. And that already is an interesting observation because I can tell you that Uganda and Zambia, despite that constitutional text, are very centralized still. So that in and of itself is a message that a constitutional text on its own is not enough. It depends how you implement it, and that's why we're here this morning. So very briefly, South Africa has a population of about 50 million, country the size of about, similar to Spain. We have 257 local governments and 9 provinces. Very strong constitutional protection. The councils are democratically elected. Their powers are specifically listed in the constitution. The metropolitan municipalities and other local governments have the power to levy property taxes and charge fees for services. They are largely self-sustainable. They depend not so much on central government, but raise their own taxes. They are, in addition, entitled to a constitutional proportion of national revenue. They appoint their own staff, they adopt their own budgets, and they make their own spending decisions. And regulation and supervision by the central government is very limited. Local government is very important in South Africa. They spend about 20% of the public expenditure. So about 20% of our public expenditure goes through local government. Now, our system of decentralization was quite radical. Our powers for the metropolitan municipalities and other local authorities are listed in the Constitution. So it wasn't a transfer like here, but it was a big bang decentralization. And with hindsight, maybe we went a bit too fast. Maybe we should have phased it in. Maybe we should have been a bit more careful. And that's one of the lessons that we learned. A big bang decentralization doesn't always work the best. So we created 3 types of local governments. And one of the types is the metropolitan municipality. Our 8 biggest cities are categorized as metropolitan municipalities. And these are single local government entities in charge of the 8 biggest cities. Johannesburg, Cape Town, Pretoria, and a few others. And these cities were, before we implemented the system, they were fragmented. For example, the city of Cape Town, where I am from, used to be governed by 60 local authorities. Now we brought that down to 1, so from 60 to 1. So that has been an enormous success in the sense that we now have big cities that can govern their metropolitan area through a unified system. It enables redistribution from richer areas to poorer areas, because South Africa, as you know, is very unequal. We have townships with grinding poverty, and we have very wealthy suburbs, and we need to transfer resources from the rich areas to the poor areas, and a unified city helps that. And we need to plan for integrated transport and integrated planning, and that has been made possible through the unification of all the metropolitan units into one big metropolitan municipality. And it also has created visible, accountable leadership. The mayor of the city is a single person in charge of that city, can be held accountable, and is visible and is visible to the leadership. The relationship between the central government and the metropolitan municipalities is very interesting. It's complex. because the metropolitan municipalities are self-sustainable. They raise about 90% of their money themselves from their taxpayers. So they don't take very kindly to being told by the central government what to do. And that makes the relationship complex. What it has also meant is that the level of government in between, the provinces, every metropolitan municipality still sits underneath a province. And that relationship is even more complicated because the province sometimes gets told by the city what to do. Because sometimes the city's budget is bigger than the provincial budget. And the provincial budget is money that it receives from the central government, but the city receives its money from its taxpayers. So the creation of these strong metropolitan municipalities has created very strong, visible, accountable leadership in local government, but it has also meant you create a big boss in your system of intergovernmental relations, which you're going to have to contend with. And maybe in the next round of questions I can talk a bit about how big regions, such as the Gauteng region, where Johannesburg and Pretoria is, how they are trying to work together to, even at a regional level, create a better system of local government.